Other people are saying they're on a list. There's a list that, was I on the list? And the police chief goes, I can't confirm or deny anything like that. Then when we got down to the rural location that we're at, he texts me, give me a call. And then he says, you're on the list. And by that time, we knew that the speaker had been killed. We don't know where the guy's at. We don't know how bad it is with the Hoffmans.
Because Senator Hoffman and his wife were also shot?
They were shot many times. I think his wife was 8 and he was 9.
But he's still alive.
He's still alive. He's still alive. And his wife is alive. So I want to be clear. I can't speak for anybody else. I can just let you know what happened with our family during that moment, and that we're all still living with this. And we have to start having some conversations about, if we're going to have public service, how do we protect those and serve?
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. Today's guest is Minnesota State House Representative Rick Hansen. Rick was first elected to represent South St. Paul in the Minnesota State House in 2004. And that same year, his colleague Melissa Hortman was also elected. She went on to serve as Speaker of the Minnesota House for 6 years. On June 14th, 2025, Melissa and her husband Mark were assassinated when they opened their front door to a man impersonating a police officer. That man had come from Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman's home, where he had shot Senator Hoffman and his wife multiple times. Their daughter had called 911 and saved her parents. The assassin had a list of lawmakers to assassinate that day, and our guest was on that list. We discussed his experience and his thoughts about the future. I met Rick at the Council of State Governments National Conference held in Chicago last week. This interview was recorded in a large convention hall, so there will be occasional background noise.
Rick Hansen, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here, Andrew.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up on a small farm outside of Freeborn, Minnesota, population 300. There were 26 people in my graduating class, the same 26, same alphabetical order, essentially K through 12. And that school doesn't exist anymore. My brother still farms there. I have an ag background. My bachelor's is in biology and my master's is in soil management. I worked at the Department of Agriculture doing pesticide licensing for a professional career after I got my degree. And then my elected journey was, we have elected soil and water conservation district supervisors. I don't know if you have those in Alaska, but they're nonpartisan, 5 per county. And you get elected and you approve projects for soil and water conservation. So I was elected to that countywide in Dakota County in 1996 and served until 2004 when I was elected to the Minnesota House. And I represent blue-collar, working-class district along the river, the southeast suburbs of St. Paul, city of South St. Paul, parts of Inver Grove, Newport, St. Paul Park, Cottage Grove. I have refineries, old communities, old suburbs, first-ring suburbs. And so I have been there 22 years, and I just announced I was running for re-election. I have chaired the Environment Committee. I've been on the Infrastructure or Capital Investment Committee the whole time I'm there. I've also been on the Audit Commission, and I've been chair on and off on that for the time I've been there. And then I'm on the Ag Committee, and currently I'm co-chair of the Ag Committee because we have evenly divided government.
Yeah, like right down the middle.
Right down the middle.
So you have an even number of folks in the House, and it's half Republicans, half Democrats?
Correct. So we have 134 members in the House, and 67 are Republicans and 67 are Democrats. So the power sharing agreement that was negotiated between the Speaker of the House, who is a Republican, and the former Speaker or Speaker Emeritus Hortman, divided up the responsibility. So we have equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats on each committee, co-chairs of both parties, and then we alternate who has each committee. But the Speaker is a Republican, and the Speaker controls the flow of bills. But in general, what happened in the spring of 2025 is things had to be fairly cooperative in terms of getting a bill passed, because any one side could veto it.
So it's interesting. In Alaska, we have an even number, and we have been evenly split before, but we don't do this power sharing. We wait until somebody flips. And I guess no one would ever, like that. That's not even something that you guys consider?
I think that maybe 20 years ago, people would flip, but I think now in the partisan nature politics that is just not there. And we also had a very bumpy start to the session. So with that evenly divided government, we had a recount. We had one member who, I think it was 27 votes, a Democratic member who won by that much, an incumbent. And so the GOP was litigating that, asking for recounts. And then we had a newly elected member who didn't live in the district where he said he did. And the GOP litigated that and proved in a court that he did not live there where he said he was. So his election was voided, and we had to have an extra election. And in the Senate, the Senate was not up last time. They have 4-year terms. We have 2-year terms. They have a 1-vote margin, but there was a Democratic senator who had been arrested for burglarizing a house and was later convicted. And she resigned from the Senate this past summer after there was a trial and she was convicted of burglary. So it is, how do I say this? Even after 22 years, with everything that's happened in the last 14 months or whatever, there's just so much strange, unprecedented. We use unprecedented a lot. We heard that. Just very strange things. The last time Minnesota had a divided house was in 1978, and that tie was broken with Democrats suing on campaign violation of one of the Republican members. That was actually in my old district back then. But there's really nobody serving now. I have to go
Who
back
had
and
that
check
kind of
who that
memory. Yeah.
So the power sharing agreement was ultimately, you have to face reality and that let's do what's best in the state and try to get a
And
budget.
who had been in control the previous 2 years?
We had the Democratic trifecta. And
So Melissa Hortman had been Speaker of the House.
Melissa Hortman had been Speaker of the House. She had been Speaker for 3 terms. So we had Democratic control in the House, but only 2 years of Democratic control in the Senate. So all this was going on, and we were normally supposed to start in early January. Therefore, Democrats, we walked out because we would have been down 1 vote because of the voided election. And we felt that the GOP would then void the election of the recount person, and then they would obtain the majority. So the GOP almost every day would come in and vote and pretend and have hearings.
But they didn't have a quorum.
They didn't have a quorum. And then the Secretary of State had to preside. Like, we get sworn in the first day. And so they conducted all of those things, and all that had no meaning until we came back in with the power sharing agreement. And that wasn't until like early February. I'm a little unclear on when that was.
And was Melissa Hortman behind the scenes, like basically organizing what was happening?
The decision of not fighting anymore and handing the Speaker gavel to Lisa Damath and accepting the title of Speaker Emeritus for doing what was good for the state. That we can spend our time fighting and arguing, but we get a power sharing agreement. You have to get the best you can get and face reality and do the work. And she did that. I remember meeting in my district at the United Food and Commercial Workers Hall of the Democratic Caucus. And there were these cold fold-up chairs and discussing what the options are. And she had the support of the caucus because of everything we had gone through. She had that support where she could negotiate. And when you negotiate with people behind you, you're strong. And we made that deal and we went in. And by the time we did that and then had the special election to replace the person who didn't live where they said they lived. And then we got back to 67. And I think for the Ag Committee, I had 2, maybe 3 committees.
And is it pretty much co-chairs for all committees?
Co-chairs for all committees.
Just can't even imagine. The nice thing about the way we do it, where we wait until somebody flips, is that we can pass things because most of the time the caucuses vote together.
Right.
And so we're passing, in our particular case, we pass things 21-19 over and over again, 21-19, 21-19. I just would think you'd have a lot of 67 votes.
Right. So you couldn't pass anything if you've got that. But if, for example, Paul Anderson's my Republican counterpart on the Ag Committee, it's like we're both older. We've been there a long time. We work it out. We remove the controversy. We pass a budget. They get a little bit. We get a little bit. And then we go into conference with the Senate. And that's a 3-way conference, which is also weird. It's not just what you pass the House and what you can pass the House. Then you've got to go negotiate with the Senate. And sometimes the lobbying interest, when they don't get what they want or want to stop something, they'll then run over to the Senate. So then when you're negotiating in the Senate with the Senate and conference committee, you've got the Senate on one side of the table, and then you've got a Republican and Democratic House members. So when there's offers going back and forth, sometimes the Senate, depending on the committee, is agreeing more with the Republicans, sometimes more with the Democrats, sometimes not at all because they want the Senate position. It's harder, but we were able to get that done. And we had, at that point, you have the executive branch gets involved on what they want with the governor's priorities. And we got the ag bill out fairly early and avoided having that considered during special session. And we passed it, very bipartisan. But then we went into special session. In special session, you have conflict because that energy, that emphasis of getting done by the deadline is gone. It took a while, and the governor would not call us in to special session until you have an agreement that you're going to pass all these bills. So, and that has to be a signed agreement. And again, that's the Speaker of the House, the former Speaker of the House, and the Senate leadership and the governor. So we were called back in on a Monday and passed these bills for different budget areas because our fiscal year ends on June 30th. So that Monday, big news cycle, a lot of attention on what we're doing, getting things resolved. And then that early Saturday morning, late Friday night, there was there was a Democratic banquet, like Democratic Party banquet, dinner.
And you were there at that?
I was not. You weren't. I was not. But many people were there, and we were at home because I had that thing the next morning. Yeah, I was going to go to a ribbon cutting in the district the next morning at 9:00, and I turned off the phone.
And was that Democratic Party? Was Melissa there?
She was there. She was there, and I've just been to enough of those over.
How long had you known Melissa?
Melissa was in my class, in the class of 2004. This year, we were the most senior members in the House. Melissa had run 2 times before and been defeated. She was elected in a very tough district in 2004. We had a large class, and it was 68-66.
Oh, wow.
So
it's really close again.
So we came in the closest it had been, and we had a tough freshman cycle or first year cycle. And then in 2006, we got in the majority.
So that Friday night, you didn't go to the Democratic event. You had a ribbon cutting the next morning. You and your wife
went to bed, turned off the phone. When we're in session, I leave the phone on because you never know the call's going to be. I turned the phone off, and I was like, I got to get up, and I got a ribbon cutting this morning. And I get up, and I notice I had a call from the Speaker Emeritus Chief of Staff. And
so from Melissa Hortman's Chief of Staff.
Yeah, from Melissa Hortman, just say, but I also, when I turn on the phone, I get all this chirping, it's like people are calling. And right about that,
it was like 7 a.m.
7 a.m, I get a call from the governor's staff, and they said, something's happening, call your police chief right away.
But didn't give you any details.
And didn't really have any details. Don't answer the door. Even if it's a police officer, don't answer the door.
What did you think when they said something's happening? What did you think that meant?
Well, we get these little alerts.
Right.
Something is happening with Hoffman. And I said, is this something with Hoffman?
He's a senator.
He's a senator. Is there something going on with Hoffman? And they just said, call your police chief. So I hung up, called the police chief, and I woke him up. And so South St. Paul is about 20,000, a little over 20,000 people. And I woke him up, and I said, the governor's office just called, said to call you. Something's going on. And he goes, let me get on it. And he goes, we'll get a unmarked or plainclothes out there right away to your house. And then we'll get an actual marked vehicle outside your house. And we're still getting these things of, we don't know what's going on. And I said, well, should I get out of town? I had another call. I'm getting texts from people now, other colleagues are like, something going on. Hoffman's been shot.
So you knew the senator had been shot by then?
Yeah. And it was like, my wife is up at that time. I said, we get out of town. And we have a farm, but we have neighbors near the farm. So we did not go to our farm. We didn't know what's happening. I said, I'm going to get ready here, get packed. We're out of here.
And you said that when you went to take a shower, you told your wife, don't answer the door.
Don't answer the door.
Yeah.
Don't answer the door. Don't answer the door. Get packed. We're going to go. And then I called the police chief back and said, I think we're going to go down to the county where we're at. And he goes, I'll contact the county sheriff there, see what we can, let them know you're coming. We'll get a camera out. So one of these tower cams, we'll get that on your street.
At what point did you know there was a list and that you were on it?
So we started getting these comments about a list, and actually I was down at the farm and I'd asked, other people are saying they're on a list. There's a list. That was I on the list? And the police chief goes, I can't confirm or deny anything like that. Then when we got down to the rural location that we're at, he texts me, give me a call. And then he says, you're on the list. And by that time, we knew that the speaker had been killed. We don't know where the guy's at. We don't know those things. We don't know how bad it is with the Hoffmans. We've gotten out of town.
Because Senator Hoffman and his wife were also shot?
They were shot. So they were shot many times. I think it was 8 or 9 times. I think his wife was 8 and he was 9. I've been texting with John during this conference because he cares. He wishes he could be at things. He's able to go to some things. He had major surgery recently, about a 9-hour surgery.
But he's still alive.
He's still alive. He's still alive. And his wife is alive. And their daughter was home and luckily was able to call the police. They survived. But you can't imagine this horror. And then there were other members where the individual had gone to their house. They weren't there, or he got interrupted at one house, and then got to the Hortmans. So I want to be clear. I can't speak for anybody else. I can just let you know what happened with our family during that moment, and that we're all still living with this. And I think when we are elected officials, we have to start having some conversations about how, if we're going to have public service, how do we protect those that serve? And that I think that's what's reinvigorating a purpose for serving, because it's so horrifying what's happened. And it's also so final, right? These are things that we never thought we would be dealing with.
Do you remember how you found out that Melissa Hortman had been killed?
I think it was through general media. It's a blur there, but it was general media as stories started getting posted. And there's a blur of media with social media.
Phone calls, texts.
Things going on. And checking back in with the floor leader during the day. And then once they knew where the guy was going, so then staying in touch with law enforcement. I know that my experience with law enforcement was good during this, that I have nothing but praise for my police chief and the people who work with him and the rural counties that I don't live there, but responded. When we drove to that site, there was a county sheriff parked there to meet us and stayed there until we knew the threat was gone. That I know I have some colleagues that don't feel that way, but for me, with South St. Paul, they were very good in providing for us. We've had to do a lot of changes, even just how we operate, taking phone numbers, taking home address information off of the public websites, and campaigning, taking your home address, those type of things off.
Yeah, but you've run for 22 years.
This is the thing. I have 22 years, plus when I was soil and water, plus being involved in a volunteer, plus my kid going through school. People know where I live. I can't erase that in my community, but it's reducing the risk. So having events, I know there are a number of members are not putting the location of a fundraiser or the location of a door knock, the time, location, the place, those things out in the public. I know of a member who's paying for their own private security.
Do you think they're overreacting?
No, I don't think there is any overreacting in this. You have to feel safe, not only you as a person, but your family. And if this is what you need to do, it's what, for me, like we said, my address is out there. People know. I have a lot of people come walk up to see me. And a thing I have done differently is I would always usually go to a coffee shop at the same time. I vary my schedule. I'm not in a routine anymore. And that's just something I've done. I don't know if any other people are doing that. I think when we get into campaigning now, door knocking, rallies, parade, I've done several parades since, and people were supportive. My constituents were supportive of me being in the parades. The most common comment I got was, "I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to see you. We support you." And I've even Republicans and that, they're like, "We're glad you're here. Thank you for the work you do." The news cycle continues to move on quickly. I think it's stunning that this appears to slip into memory. I think we need to not let that happen if we want a strong democracy and people to participate. We have to have people who run for office feel safe running for office, and we have to find some way of doing that. We have security systems now, Ring cameras. Those were reimbursed from the state. So we send in the receipts, and I think most state legislatures get reimbursed for a certain amount of cell phones or mileage for things that they're doing as part of their job. I think that's something here we should talk at these national conferences. Can we provide a model for state legislatures to use? I work a lot in the environment area, and we have a saying that prevention is better than cleanup. And I think if we provide some models like what states could do of if you're providing security for a legislator or elected officials, and that's Secretary of State, auditor, whatever, and even school board members, some brutal stuff is being said at school board meetings or city council meetings. And so how do we protect democracy? By protecting those who want to serve. And I don't have a complete answer on that. I think we need to look at how do we provide that support.
So you guys haven't met as a legislature
No.
since this happened. So you can't really comment on what it's going to feel like to go back into the chambers.
No, we had a kind of a Democratic policy retreat at the Capitol a week ago. And that, for some people, that was the first time they've been in the Capitol since Melissa and Mark were lying in state in the Capitol Rotunda. So it was the first time for some members. And it was hard. It's hard to go in because you get this memory that comes back. But we have not been voting. We go into session February 17th. We've also had just a number of special elections since we had the special election for Melissa's seat. So we don't have an appointment.
Did it go to a Democrat?
Went to a Democrat. So we don't have an appointment system. You have to go to special election. And then there had been a Republican senator that had a heart attack. So we had a special election for that seat. And then we had a Democratic member got elected mayor of St. Paul. So now there's a special election campaign going on now. And then for the burglar who got convicted and then had to resign, there was a special election there. And we had a Democratic House member that ran for that and got elected to the Senate. So now we have a special election for that seat. So we have two special elections. So we are technically at 67, 65 right now.
Assuming that you get back to 67, 67, will you guys do the same power sharing agreement?
Power sharing agreement.
And do you know who will be? Would you call the person? What would their name be?
So this fall, we elected a new leader. So there's the Democratic leader. The title of Speaker Emerita is Melissa's. That's hers. But the Democratic leader, Zach Stevenson, was very close with Melissa, was her campaign manager for her when he was younger. And he is the Democratic leader. The floor leader, which would be on a normal situation, the majority leader. So you have a speaker, majority leader. So we have the Democratic leader, and then we have a floor leader. That's Jamie Long. So he's staying in that position. So we're organized within the Democratic caucus. On the Republican side, the speaker is running for governor. The co-chair of the fraud committee is running for governor. And the governor is up for re-election.
So they're basically, it's going to be a completely different group of people walking in with different leadership.
Different leadership, but we don't have a budget year. The main thing that we should do this coming year is capital investments. We've got to continue doing these things for the people of Minnesota. So I'm actually pretty hopeful that will happen.
Speaking of an election year, you announced you were running for re-election yesterday?
Yeah. Or Monday.
Monday. A few days ago.
Yeah.
So it's early.
Right.
People don't have to have declared that they're running.
Right.
But are you afraid that with the political violence that happened last summer, that some good people will decide not to run first-time candidates may decide that they don't want to do this?
I think that could be happening, but we have more people. A couple of Republican legislators announced yesterday they're not running again. I think there will be a high number of people
That decide not to run
that
again.
decide not to run again for whatever reason. I'm just, again, speaking for myself. Our son is 21 years old.
He's out of the house.
He's out of the house. I served, and my wife took care of him a lot during those long hours. He was a baby when I got elected, but I just don't know if I could see doing that again in this environment. And we have to have a diversity of ages, backgrounds, experience, thought in legislatures. We have to have people who represent the people we represent. We have to have that. And so I think back on the security questions, we have to make sure we provide security for folks running. I think there will be more that don't run for whatever reason. I think we'll have a lot of turnover. And I announced I have a poor district, and having seniority to try to help with capital projects and things is important. And I think that, again, on this diversity, you need some people who've seen stuff tried before. There are some people who go into this to be somebody, and some people go into this to do something. And Melissa Hortman was somebody who wanted to do something. I think I view myself as someone who wants to do something as a senior member. There's always going to be people, and always have been, who want to be somebody, but you got to get the work done. And a lot of that is tough. It's tough work.
You served with Ilhan Omar.
Served with Ilhan. Yeah, she was in the House for one term. I've served with a lot of people that go out and do amazing things. I saw Ilhan when we're at these conferences and we go to DC for things and meetings, and Ilhan still remembers being in the Minnesota House of Representatives and still knows that I do environment stuff. And
How do you feel when you see the way the president is treating her?
I think the president is, there used to be a saying, who do you pick to run for president? Somebody you'd want to go have a beer with. This president, I don't think I'd want to be in the same room with him. It's just so nasty. It's just a nasty person, and it's not getting any better. And it's wrong. It's wrong for him to call people garbage. For the president of the United States to call human beings garbage. People are not garbage. They're people. And those of us in elected office have to lead by example of trying to be better. And this poison that's coming from the top infects everything.
For folks in Alaska who the only thing they know about Ilhan Omar is what they see on the nightly news and her interactions with Trump, can you talk a little bit about how you feel about her as a congresswoman?
I think that Ilhan is kind, and she's smart. She's thoughtful, and there's no pretentiousness. She is just sharp, kind, generous. I'd say generous with her time. Like, with congressional people, you get a certain amount of time, and Ilhan is, no, I served with these guys. I want to talk with them. I want to talk to them. I want to see them. What do you think, Rick? What do you think about this? So that, I think, is something that people should know nationwide, that if they met her, they would like. Politics is about improving people's lives, and to make the broad statements of everything is bad and everybody's bad, everybody's crooked. We can do better than that. I'm not sure how we're going to pull out of this, but I think we will. I think it takes courage of standing up and saying, there is a better way. This is not what we should be. We're dealing with human beings. And I think that we need to ask just regular people to set the phones down a little bit, and maybe we start talking with each other and listening to each other. And that's a lot easier to say than to do. But we also need to have this cross-generational connection of people talking across generational backgrounds, age backgrounds, race backgrounds. You've got to mix it up a little bit with people talking. And I'm not sure which way, how we do it, but we have to say it doesn't have to be this way. We can do something different.
Representative Rick Hansen, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@aklike.gov or call 907-269-0123.